Hello, everybody out in Manchester, Hooksett, Auburn. This is the Progress Report, and it is not the first Wednesday of the month, but nonetheless, I'm very delighted and pleased to have with me my good friend of many, many years long-standing, Lou D'Alessandro, my usual co-host at this time on Wednesdays, or this particular Wednesday during the course of the month. Mike Farley is off being with the Hibernians because this Sunday they are hosting the grandest parade in the city, the grandest parade in northern New England, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which we have through a very smart decision not to have on St. Patrick's Day, but after that, because we get, number one, we get a lot of better bands coming up that have been another St. Patrick's Day, and the weather's going to be better.
Right.
And we have another northeaster coming in, but apparently we're going to be only grazed by this one. So and so on, I hope everybody's going to come out and want to be, wearing the green and enjoying the greatest gift to the city of Manchester from the Hibernians and the parade committee, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and I imagine my good friend Lou D'Alessandro will be marching in that parade.
Well, I'll be there for sure. I've been there for many, many years. Kudos to Danny O'Neill and the group for putting it together.
And the Hibernians,
they put it
Ancient
together.
and Honorable Order of Hibernians, and all of that.
Right. It's St. Patrick's year in Manchester.
St. Patrick's year.
We do it every year.
I've never had the privilege of being in Ireland on St. Patrick's Day. I hear rumors that we actually do more St. Patrick's parades here in Boston and Manchester, and the heritage here is phenomenal.
I was in Boston the day before St. Patrick's Day. Jimmy Brett had a wonderful event at St. Teresa's of Calcutta's Church for the food pantry, named after his mother. And it was a magnificent event. He raised lots of money for the food pantry. The governor of Massachusetts was there. The mayor of Boston was there. Almost every political candidate in America was there. But the purpose of the event was to raise money for the food pantry.
Yeah.
And every dollar went to the food pantry. And that is a wonderful, wonderful...
It's a wonderful cause.
Yeah, really. And you know, Bob, what I think our viewers don't realize is how many people there are out there who need this kind of help. St. Raphael's Church has a food pantry on Monday nights. They have a clothing giveaway on Monday nights. I've been to New Horizons on Tuesdays when they have the bread line. It's just amazing to me how many people have dramatic needs. And I think I heard there are like 400 kids in Manchester who are homeless, don't know where they're going to sleep at night.
Imagine that. Imagine that in the richest country in the history of the world.
The richest country in the world.
I don't understand it.
We're in a wave of enormous prosperity. We've hit that economic cycle. We're really on the upswing, and all of these things are happening in our city. And we don't have to talk about other nations. We don't have to talk about other sections.
No, we don't.
Sections of the world. We talk about Manchester, New Hampshire, and what's happening in our city. And I visited New Horizons. I visited Hope for Recovery. I was at an event that Alderman Baines had with the businessmen to talk about downtown and problems facing downtown, and then his store gets held up.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, and unbelievable.
His very popular Mint restaurant.
Yes, right here on the main street.
Right here on the main drag
of Manchester. So a lot going on, and the president came to Manchester. The vice president is coming tomorrow. I'll tell you. Now, talk about the biggest waste of money in the history of the civilized world, to come here for 2 hours. To come here for 2 hours. Of course, the jet fuel itself was a fortune. It's a fortune. I mean, he could have done it. He could have done it on Skype. I mean, you talk about...
Well, you're talking about a guy who had one cabinet member who bought office furniture for $31,000. Well, you have others that are flying first class when they could easily fly, steerage like everybody else if they were really, wanting to connect with ordinary people. Well, I don't understand it.
It's depressing.
It's depressing.
The president uses this, and then it's an invitation-only event.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talk about how careful New Hampshire is with every dollar we spend. Every dollar we spend, and I've worked the budget in New Hampshire for 20 years.
Well, I was
I'm a
out.
big
I was out in
biennium.
Goffstown at Apotheca. You know,
Yeah.
the lovely coffee shop there. The
Yeah,
old
great
train depot
place.
there. A couple of your good friends were there. Retta,
Oh, Retta, for
J.P.
sure.
Matthews McGregor, and Barbara Conable, and Carbonneau, I should say. And they're saying we're going to make our signs and go, stand and protest the president. I said, by God, I think I'll do that too. If these two ladies are going to come in from Goffstown, so I made my sign, and it was a sign that said, "Impeach the porn star president." I kind of like that.
Yeah, well,
And I went down to Victory Common, and there was nobody there. I thought that's where it was. Then I went to Veterans Common. There was nobody there. So I never got to put my sign up to protest, but I have an idea that may be useful in the future.
Well, possibly. Anyway, events happening in our beautiful state. The presidency, the vice president's here, and at the same time, we're still facing an opioid crisis that seems to just be omnipresent in our city and in our state. We're fighting it all the time, and fortunately, Hope for Recovery New Hampshire got $600,000 from Health and Human Services to take care of Manchester, Berlin, and Franklin. So thank God for that. They got $150,000 up front, and they're going to get the rest of it on a quarterly basis.
So here's the
Make sure
question
the
I've
work
got,
is
Lou.
being done, yeah.
It's kind of distressing when we hear the significance of the opioid crisis
Yes.
here. The deaths per capita, which we're very close to
The top.
and we don't like that record at all. And yet we hear about the bankruptcy of which is a New Recovery.
Yes, the Hope for Recovery.
Hope for Recovery,
Right.
and closing 4 out of 5s.
Yeah.
I mean, is this as bad as it sounds, or are we going to be able to replace these resources to try and deal with these desperately needy folks?
Well, that's an excellent question for which there doesn't seem to be an answer at this point in time. We've appropriated a lot of money over the last few bienniums, and I think the tragedy of this situation began when Health and Human Services lapsed $20 million from the budget. When you're allocated $20 million and you don't spend it, what do people think? They think it's not needed,
Right.
And we know because we're there. We know it is needed. So when something like that happens, the two most important things are trust in your government and the ability to connect with your government. If you can't trust your government to do the things that are needed, there's a problem. And I think that's become an issue that's pervasive throughout the country. We don't
Right.
trust our government anymore. So.
And that's not just by accident. There are
No.
people that are seeking to have us not trust our government.
Yes, I think
There are,
you're
there
right.
are forces there that want the government out of their way so they can
Right.
gouge us, or do nefarious things.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're dealing with.
I don't think there's any question that there is a group that wants to dismantle the government totally dismantle the government,
Yep.
and run this society like it was the Wild West.
Yep.
Well, it isn't the Wild West, and we need government,
Yep.
and we need certain parameters in this society to make it run properly. And bottom line is you've got to trust your government that they're going to address your needs. And I think we've just lost our way, and we've got to come back and get our way, because we're the richest nation in the world,
In the history of the
in
world.
the history of the world. But someone told me republics last about 390 years, and we're
Yeah.
350 years old.
Yeah,
Think about it.
right.
As a historian, I say, I think about that often. Tough sleeping at night.
It is.
And I mean that sincerely.
I was thinking of the, when the Berlin Wall fell, and people swarmed into Western Europe from the east, and there was the shining moment of a democracy movement in Russia itself. And I think, at that time there was a very distinguished historian named Francis Fukuyama. And this was a cover story in the Time magazine, The End of History. And what he meant by that was, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the sweep of democracy movements across Eastern Europe, even to
Right.
Russia itself, that the wave of democracy was now unstoppable. Democracy was the future, and market economics, free market economics, was the future. That was it. There was no more yin and yang between socialism and capitalism. This was the end of history. That was what he said, the end of history. And look what's happening now.
Well,
We are not at the end of history. We are seeing a resurgence of authoritarianism.
Oh, no
I
question.
would say in the United States of America itself, and that's really the most distressing, but around the world, in China, where they just eliminated any term limits for the president, the president's going to serve for life.
Right.
In Hungary, in Poland, which
yeah.
led the rebellion
Right,
against
right.
the Soviet Empire.
Lech Walesa.
Lech Walesa and the Solidarity Movement, the Union Movement.
Yeah.
They are moving and repressing free press, suppressing an independent judiciary, and in Turkey, with Erdogan, and in
right.
Hungary. I mean, this is truly alarming.
Well, I think it's a wave of dictatorship returning.
It is.
It's a wave of
And the idea that democracy was moving inevitably towards success everywhere, at the moment, it seems to be on retreat in more
Right.
places than we would dare to believe.
yes.
And I think it's just totally alarming. And I'm not so sure our country is not part of that too. I mean, we have a president who delights in calling the free press, which is sometimes called the Fourth Estate.
Right. The fourth
That
estate
comes from
is
the
correct.
French Revolution. We had
Yep.
the three estates: the nobility, the church, and then the commoners.
Right.
The fourth estate was the press.
Yeah.
And now we have them being called by our own president the enemies of the people.
Right.
The press, the enemies of the people. Think about that and what that may portend.
Yeah. It's,
Paul, do we still have a call?
Yeah, you have Eddie on line 1, and you're 3 minutes to break. So
Okay.
Take your pick.
Okay, we'll take Eddie, and then we'll take our break. Hello, Eddie. Welcome back. We're always glad to have you join us. This is Lou and I on the Progress Report. Go right ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hey, listen, a few times tonight you both mentioned that we're the richest country on earth, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, don't we have a $30 trillion deficit, something like that? $20 trillion deficit?
We have an enormous deficit. That's correct. But
Oh.
we're still the wealthiest nation in the world. You know, when you look at, if you aggregated all of the wealth of this country, it would far exceed the deficit. Far exceed the deficit. The problem is we continue to deficit spend, because what we're doing on the other side is we're reducing our capacity to get revenue. That's number one by the tax reform that was created. And what we've done is we've exchanged a balanced budget and the ability to balance that budget for a series of tax cuts to supposedly produce more money on the spend side, so that you can reinvigorate the economic environment here. You know, it's Keynesian economics, but I think played out to a much greater scale, much greater
Well, I
scale.
still think it goes back to the fact that we have a $20 trillion deficit. I doubt
Sure.
that we're wealthier than Dubai and Saudi Arabia,
Well,
some of these other oil-producing nations. I doubt it.
well, I think if you aggregated the wealth of Saudi Arabia and Dubai, it would be minuscule compared to
What
the
do you mean
wealth of
by
this
aggregate?
country.
Did you explain
Put
it?
it all together. Put it all together.
Put their
and-
gross domestic
put their
products
gross
together,
domestic-
and they would be a tiny fraction of what we have.
Yeah. Well, I don't. To the best of my knowledge, it's the oil that oil production and the sale of oil that produces the enormous wealth, and that's based on the demand by the rest of the civilized world.
Well, I understand all that.
Sure.
I see it. You say we're the richest country on earth. I see a $20 trillion deficit. But
Yep.
do you disagree with the notion that cutting taxes increases revenue? You don't agree with that?
I agree with it partially if you do it properly. All right, and where do you cut taxes? Do you cut taxes for the lowest income people so that they can raise themselves in the socioeconomic environment? And
Well, what about the lowest income people that aren't paying any taxes? I mean,
what about the businesses
Not paying
that
any
aren't paying any
taxes.
taxes? That's an issue
Yeah,
too.
how about General Electric, who didn't pay any taxes for years?
I think
I'm talking about personal income tax here, Bob. I'm talking about personal income tax.
Well, income taxes are income taxes.
I don't know, where was
I'm
general
very
electric
concerned about the
utility-
corporations that aren't paying their fair share.
I think if we wanted to look at the tax situation and the economic situation, we could spend an hour debating that, and I would certainly appreciate your input. But I've worked on budgets in New Hampshire for almost 20 years now. We do a biennial budget, so it's 10 budgets. I've created 2 of those as chairman of the finance committee in the Senate, and I could relate to our dependence on the federal government, because fully half of our budget is federal money. Half of our money. Our budget's $11.3 billion. Federal dollars represent a significant portion of that budget. And in New Hampshire, it's the things that we don't fund that cause us problems. But happy to talk to you about economics. I'd love to learn from you, because listen, you never stop learning, I'll tell you that. So I appreciate your contribution. And if you
All
can,
right. Hey, Bob.
Yes.
If you want to increase revenue, check this out. You do a capital gains rate of 0. Nothing. You want to create jobs, you want to generate revenue, you want to spur the economy, a capital gains tax rate of 0. All right. Thank you, fellas.
I
Okay,
think
thank you.
I can't agree with you on that stuff, Eddie. I don't think that works. I
Well,
mean,
we have
the
to-
idea that you increase revenues by cutting taxes, that is what George Bush, H.W. Bush, said, when he was president, several years ago. Voodoo economics. That is voodoo economics.
and I think Ronald Reagan's economic plan was very similar to that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't work. Balanced budgets mean you bring in X amount of money, you spend X amount of money, but you bring in more than you spend.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, and I think that could be done, because it was done during the Clinton administration, and they created surpluses.
Yeah.
So it's
They did. They left us with a surplus.
Yes, left us with a surplus. And
The idea that the Republicans are the guardians of public, fiscal
No, that's over.
austerity. I mean, it's just nonsense.
Well,
This last tax plan that they put through is going to increase the federal debt by between $1 trillion and $1.5 trillion. Where are all the Republicans that were screaming about the debt level when Clinton was president? Where are they? They voted for this. Well, anyway, we'll come back with another segment of the Progress Report right after a very quick break. Thank you, Eddie, for calling in. We'll welcome other calls, 640-3091, and we'll be right back. So, for everybody, this is the Progress Report for this Wednesday, March 21st, 2018. And I'm very pleased to have with me, not at the usual week of the month where he appears, but Lou D'Alessandro, the Dean of the Senate, the longest serving senator we have, and a person who's contributed so much to the life of New Hampshire in many ways, going back many, many years, and still contributing mightily in many, many areas. And we're talking about issues that you may want to join us on, 640-3091. We have both the House and the Senate are very active with major bills right now coming down the crunch. Actually, crossover day is tomorrow.
Yes.
That means when all the House bills have to go to the Senate and
the-
vice versa.
Right.
And so it's a very active time in Concord where your legislature is hard at work. Every one of us gets paid $100 a year, whether we're worth it or not. And that includes me and Lou D'Alessandro.
Right.
And so we are here to talk about things that may be of interest to you in the city of Manchester. How do you think our new mayor is doing as she launches into her initial term? I hope it's going to be her only term. She certainly had some amazing initiatives. She's been much more active appearing before our committees in Concord than our prior mayor was. She's done an awful lot,
Right.
and we're very excited about that. We have a wild race in the 1st Congressional District.
Yes, wow is right.
Where we had our 3-term Congresswoman, Carol Shea Porter, is to my
Retiring.
surprise that she's not running again. And we have all kinds of folks lining up to succeed her, including Bernie Sanders' son, who doesn't even live in the district. What do you think
Right.
about that, folks? Do you think that's a good thing? We have Chris Pappas, a fine representative and executive counselor from Manchester. Everybody loves the Puritan Restaurant. You go up there, you can thank Chris for doing a lot of good things, not only putting on good meals for people, but doing a lot of good things for this community.
Yes.
We have some outstanding folks in the Seacoast area, Mindy Mesner, a environmental scientist. We have Paul McEachran's son, Declan McEachran.
Right.
And we have Morris Sullivan, who's I don't know much about her, but she's in Portsmouth and she's interested. We have Lincoln Saldati, who's a
Right.
longtime prosecutor in Stratford County,
Right.
and I think a very good guy. And I'm leaving out some people. I'm
Well, you
sure.
got Mark McKenzie.
Mark McKenzie from Manchester. Longtime
Longtime firefighter,
president
labor.
of the AFL-CIO and a firefighter.
Right.
Wonderful guy, now serving in the House. I certainly don't want to leave him out.
Right.
And this is going to be a very interesting race. A lot of people are expecting, and I certainly hope I can be right in saying I share their expectations. There's a blue wave coming, folks. There's a blue wave coming, and this is going to be the year when I think there's going to be dramatic changes in our state house, in our national legislature, and lots of interesting things are going to happen. I hope you're all engaged and active, and don't be apathetic. Be part of it. Don't drop out. Tune in. Get on board. Be part of it, because lots of interesting things are happening.
Right. I think you're right. Big things are going to happen across the country. You look at these special elections that have taken place, and there have been some upsets. That
I only wish there were more of them, because we were doing so well.
Right. Well, that Pennsylvania situation was certainly an upset.
Yeah.
He didn't win in a landslide by all means, but he did win by what 900 votes in the final tally?
Whatever it is, a win is a win is a win.
One
And this
vote
was,
is a
this was
win.
a vote that Trump took by 20 points, folks. A
Yep,
very
20 points.
red area in
Very
western
much so.
Pennsylvania around the Pittsburgh suburbs.
Yep. A very, very
And then the
important
stunning upset in Alabama, which,
Yes.
our leader in the House, Steve Shurtleff, went down there with several Democrats
Yeah.
and participated in that. And we're very excited about things. We're very motivated. We're upbeat.
Yes.
And so we're looking forward to this next election. I think we've now run through the string of special elections for the House, at least.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any more.
And there's no more, but of those, almost all were won by Democrats, some in amazingly strong Republican areas.
Yes.
Like Wolfboro.
Yes.
Wolfboro.
Amazing win at
Wolfboro.
Right.
Hadn't elected a Democrat since 1913, and we elected a Democrat.
Yeah.
And down in Chester and Sanborn, a lovely lady named Lori Kerner surprised the heck out of everybody by winning. And these things are news, not only in our area, but even nationally. We've been seeing excitement, and there's been nothing like this for quite a while. There's tremendous energy. So-
I think the young Democrats have really done extremely well. They're very aggressive.
They're a
very
wonderful
motivated,
organization, powerful.
a wonderful group, and
Yeah.
they're helping. Well, which indeed is something that this party has needed. It's needed a resurgence. It's needed young people. It's needed some enthusiasm.
Yep.
It needed a group that were really going to get the vote out and work very hard to get the vote out. And as I say, if people trust you, the likability and trust quotients are very important in politics. Both of them stand you in very good stead here in the state of New Hampshire, because we still are very, very much a knock-on-door state. That
People want to have that personal contact.
Yeah, personal relationships.
Yep, they do.
And knock on those
Yep.
doors and keep going. And people want to know you. They want to talk to you. They want to face to face. And that's the way it's got to be. I mean, that's what made this country great. That's what will continue to keep us going. But I think we got to recover our moral compass. That,
We
to
do.
me, that's a very important thing.
We can't be dragged down by the moral decay and
Yeah.
represented by the Trump administration.
Well, we can't.
But Lou, I'd like you to talk about something and get back from this, high-level view of
Right.
politics to just what we need to do for people here in New Hampshire. Well, let's talk to Alan. He's on line one.
Okay.
Okay, and then I want to talk about Medicaid expansion.
Yes, happy to.
Okay. Hey, Alan, are you with us? This is the Progress Report. I'm Bob Backus. You're with me and Lou D'Alessandro. We welcome you.
Yeah, this is for Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
I recently ran into, I had a restaurant myself at a restaurant, former House Speaker George Roberts.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask the senator, what has changed or what has changed since the days of George Roberts and Arthur Drake and
Right. Good.
Stuart Lamprey?
Right. What are you
and,
talking?
and those old
Right.
politicians.
Right.
As opposed to nowadays. I'm just
Right.
curious to see his, and Walter Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious to see his opinion on
Well,
how
well.
things are going, up or down, or
Okay.
whatever.
Well, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank
That's
you.
a wonderful question.
It
Thank you.
is a great question. I went to college with George Roberts. We went to the University of New Hampshire together. And when I came to the legislature, George was the majority leader at that time for the Republican Party. Walter Peterson, a wonderful friend of mine, mentor of mine, and a guy who had all of the qualities of a great human being. You trusted Walter, you believed in Walter, and indeed he was a gentleman, and he set a mark in terms of government, and he made dramatic change. It was
Including the last big change in our tax structure in
the
this
most
state.
the most significant change to take place in the history of New Hampshire with regard to taxation was done during Walter Peterson's tenure as governor, when he created Royden Sanders and the Tax Reform Committee, and we went from the inventory, stock and trade tax to the business profits tax.
That's right.
Major change that really revolutionized the tax situation in New Hampshire. So what's different? Arthur Drake was chairman of appropriations when I first came to the legislature. Drake's Dry Goods in Lancaster was a store. Arthur Drake was an excellent human being. He listened to people. He ran a committee with courtesy and collegiality, and everyone had their say. Arthur Drake, great guy. So start right there. Arthur is chairman of appropriations. Kim Anzakis is deputy speaker. Jim O'Neill is speaker of the House of Representatives. You wouldn't have found a more kinder, gentler human being than Jim O'Neill. And treated everybody with respect. And there was good decor in the House of Representatives. There was collegiality. People got along. And you weren't biting each other all the time. That's the major difference. Respect, collegiality, and the ability to get things done. Now, does that mean everything was smooth as silk? Absolutely not. There were those times when there were fights on the floor of the House, but you never went to the point where it was not a repairable situation. You could debate, you could differ, but you did it in a very honorable fashion. That's the main difference. And every person that you spoke about, every person that you questioned, fell into that category. Number one, Walter Peterson. There hasn't been another Walter Peterson since I've been around. He helped me. He guided me through this life. We were collegial presidents together when I was president of Daniel Webster and he was president of Franklin Pierce. He then hired me at Franklin Pierce to be vice president of Franklin Pierce. Wonderful guy who respected everybody, treated everybody with dignity, listened to everybody, and believed in one basic premise that most people have forgotten. You always hire better people. You never are ashamed to hire someone who you think is smarter than you are, because you can always benefit from that experience.
That's right.
Surround yourself
That's a
with
good
good people who are capable people. That's the difference today. That's the difference. And the ability to connect with people, that personal relationship. I'm going to be there, look you straight in the eye and address your question. All of the people that you mentioned fell into that category. And I knew every one of them. Arthur Drake passed away. I went to Arthur Drake's wake. I spoke at Walter Peterson's funeral. I was helpful I say, in getting the lobby of the Legislative Office Building named after George Roberts, because we should respect George for what he did. He created the Legislative Facilities Committee. He bought the building. He had the state buy the building, the old post office, which they were going to tear down, and it's become the Legislative Office Building. We had no offices before George Roberts.
How could we do business without that?
Yeah, how could we? How could we do it today
We
without
couldn't
the
do it today.
LBA? So, those people that you mentioned, quality people who gave so much to the state.
Very good. Thanks for that call. That was a nice call.
Yeah.
And we remember these people very fondly. We had our disagreements with them on some policy issues, but they were good people, and we honor them, George Roberts included.
Yep.
So, Lou, I wanted to, because we haven't got too long for our final break, but I did want to get something that I know is near and dear to your heart, and so important for New Hampshire, and particularly for the city of Manchester.
Yes.
And that is, can we expand and continue the Medicaid expansion? The Senate seems to be on track to move this ahead, and we're kind of worried about what's going to happen in the House. But talk about the stakes of what we're talking about here and how important it is to our beloved city.
Well, I think the mayor went up and testified for Medicaid expansion. There were 8,000 lives involved in the city of Manchester. 8,000 lives. The Senate passed Medicaid expansion with a 17-7 vote. Now, when you look at the funding, you have to say it's creative, and I don't think there's any question about that. But it's funded with money from the Alcohol and Drug Fund, and that's about $11 million. Then the insurance premium tax, that's in there, and there's a reserve that from insurance money that's in there. Let's hope that does the trick, because we need about $30 million to be the balancing act between the 90% from the feds and the 10%
Is it down to
from the state.
90% already?
It's not quite there yet. We're probably
going there.
96, but
Yeah.
it's going there, and we have a 5.5-year plan that passed the Senate. So it's funded, and people said, well, how are you going to backfill the money that you took out of the Alcohol and Drug Fund? You can backfill that with federal dollars that are coming into the state.
Oh.
State's going to get a big windfall from the reauthorization of the CHINS program. Almost $51 million will come. $20 million has come this year, and the rest will come next year. So, and the repatriation of monies coming back to the states because of the tax reform bill are going to be lots of revenue for the state. Now, they're one-time revenues, but there's going to be a significant increase of revenue. So why is Medicaid expansion so important? Because the drug and alcohol treatment, that's coming out of Medicaid expansion because it's covered. It's covered. The 26-year-old who wasn't covered prior to Medicaid expansion is now still part of the health program. And people are becoming insured. And in New Hampshire, we move them to insurance. And under this deal, we're going to move them to MCOs. And the MCOs, hopefully, they'll be at
What
least...
are MCOs?
The managed care organizations.
Okay.
So they'll go to managed care. Hopefully we'll have at least 2, because we have to have 2 by statute, but I think we may have even 3, to manage the health of these individuals. That's very important. You want to keep them out of the emergency room and keep them getting the kind of treatment they need and going to the right sources that supply that treatment. That's why it's so important. The hospitals are sled length behind it, and many of these not-for-profits who deal with health concerns are sled length behind. It's a good program. Now the people say it's costly, it's expensive. Yes, it's expensive, but health care is expensive.
Especially in this country.
Yeah, I mean, health care is expensive. It is what it is. What it is. Could we do a better job? Sure, we could do a better job. But indeed, the thing that has to happen is you got to trust the person who you put your faith in. You got to trust people that this bill that has been created, voted upon by the Senate, is in the best interest of the people. Now, those who slam it for many, many different reasons. But indeed, if it's doing the job and it's doing something positive for the population, it's doing a good thing. You can always improve everything. Nothing is perfect, right? We strive for perfection.
None of us ever achieve it.
But we don't achieve it. But we strive for protection, and it's going to be tough in the House of Representatives.
Well, we're going to work on it as hard as we can.
Got to.
I will pitch everybody I can. What would be the consequences if we didn't renew the expansion of Medicaid? What would be the consequences from New Hampshire?
Well, you'd have 52,000 lives that aren't covered. Think about that.
That's a terrible
And where
thought.
would they go? They go to the emergency room of the hospital?
And those costs get shifted off to other people
right.
who do have
Then
resources.
you'd think about the uncompensated care costs.
This is why the hospital stepped up in the last time we authorized the Medicaid expansion to do the match for the state.
Right, yep.
But we won't be able to use that particular gambit again.
Right. CMS
Yeah.
has said that's not appropriate. It's not legal. So we have a new methodology.
Yeah.
So we'll work on it.
Okay. We're apparently up and against our next break because, as our viewers know, it's our habit here to take a couple of breaks, very brief ones, break this show into 3 segments, and we'll be up with our 3 segments, our 3rd segment very soon. And we've had a couple of wonderful callers. We hope you will join us too. And if you want to chip in, it's 640-3091. Love to hear from you to talk with either the distinguished Dean of the Senate, who sits next to me, or me. We're happy to be back with you in just a moment. So, folks, as you know, if you've been with us or you're familiar with this program, this is the Progress Report. We're on every Wednesday from 7 to 8. We have 5 re-airings. We love to have calls come in, and we've had a couple of good ones on this show, and we'd like more. If you want to participate, 640-3091. Love to hear from you. And this week, I'm very, very pleased to have my good friend and the Dean of the Senate with me, Lou D'Alessandro, who has served, my God, I think he's taught half the kids in New Hampshire at high school or college level. And the ones he hasn't taught, he's probably coached. And he has turned a distinguished career as an educator and a coach into a very distinguished career as a legislator, an executive counselor, a representative, Senate. His license plate now says Dean of the Senate, and nobody questions that. And it's just a real pleasure to have him here with me. And there's a lot happening in your state government. A lot is going on. And it's kind of crunch time because tomorrow is what they call crossover day.
Crossover day.
All the bills that were filed in the House have to be moved to the Senate after tomorrow, and vice versa.
Right.
So there's a lot of exciting things happening, at least for us that are into these policy issues. And we've talked about one of the biggest ones, whether we will continue our Medicaid expansion. I have to believe we're going to get this done. The Senate's done its part. The House has to do its part. But I think we're going to get this done. But, you know, one of the things that's really near and dear to my heart is a kid who grew up in the Manchester area, actually a native of Goffstown, which Lou now represents. And I'm remembering very fondly as a high school kid, being able to hop on a train in Manchester's spectacular station, which should have never been torn down.
Never, ever been
was
torn
one
down.
of the gems of the city. Going down to North Station and going to take a course on nature study at the Museum of Science as a kid. I remember one time coming back on the train, and I won a snake. I won a snake from the Museum of Science. I had it on the seat next to me in a bag, and it was moving around the bag, and believe me, I had the area around me all to myself, bringing that snake home.
That's for sure.
And I'd love to see rail transportation back to the great state of New Hampshire. We now have right here in this corridor, what they call the Capital Corridor, Manchester, Nashua, and Concord, the largest urban area in the country not served by any passenger rail. Think about that. The largest area in the country not served by passenger rail. And we have all these exciting things happening here in Manchester. We have the Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute, Army.
Right.
Dean Kamen's latest venture in association with UNH Manchester and other participants. That's extremely exciting. We've been a high-tech state. We are a state of innovators and entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And we are a state that does a lot of exports. We are no backwater here. We are really a happening place. We'll be a more happening place when people can get here by rail and when our people can get there by rail. But it goes both ways. We want people to come here by rail.
Right.
And let's talk to Jack. We have Jack on line one. Hello. Hi, Jack. You're on the air with Lou D'Alessandro and Bob Backus. We're happy to welcome you to the Progress Report. You there? Hello?
Are you there, Jack? We lost him.
Jack? Sorry we lost you, but if you want to call back, we'll try and get you. I don't know why we're not hearing you because I understood you were in line. You want to talk about that? Because we had
I think he might have been listening to his television.
Oh,
okay.
Well,
Well,
talk to us instead, Jack. It'd be more interesting. We had a very exciting vote in the House, the 10-year transportation plan,
yes,
which defines the projects we're going to do within that period in the highway system in New Hampshire, which is, by the way, in stress because revenues are down because people are driving more efficient cars. They're driving hybrids and a lot of reasons. We're not getting the revenues from the gas tax that we used to. But the 10-year plan includes some really significant things for Manchester, like the redesign of exit 6 and 7 up at the Amoskeag Circle.
Whoa.
Now that's an old highway design. Yep. It's got real deficiencies. Anybody that comes up there, certain times a day, you see those signs, watch for stop traffic ahead. That's not good.
Right.
And trying to merge onto the highways, I actually avoid that.
Yeah.
That particular thing at certain times of day because it's not good. It's
very dangerous.
hazardous.
Yeah,
it's really hazardous.
Yeah, 6 and 7.
It's going to address that kind of situation, which is a major design problem. and all these things. Why shouldn't our transportation plan, which is not just a highway plan, it's a transportation plan. Why shouldn't our transportation plan include the option to have another modality for transportation, passenger rail, which would include, things like better freight traffic.
Yes.
Our rail lines between, Boston and Manchester, they still use, but the maximum speed I think is 12 miles an hour in the whole state of New Hampshire.
It's pretty it's pretty poor. No question.
The Chinese and the Japanese developing bullet trains.
Right.
They won't be using the tracks in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I think the maximum speed you can get is 30 miles an hour on those tracks.
Is it that high? I didn't think it was even that high.
The tracks have been in disrepair forever.
Oh, yeah.
Forever. Now, we could go back to the old days, Bob, when you were young and I was young, when I used to take the train from Boston to Manchester to see my girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
The beautiful Pat Morgenstern, who I met in college, and I would take the
Would
train.
that be the Pat who's now your wife?
That
by
is
any
the Pat
chance?
who's now my wife.
What a wonderful lady.
And used to take the train up from Boston to see her. And, you talked about the station. What a tragedy.
Yeah.
What a tragedy.
We should. The only thing maybe worse, and I only say maybe, is the destruction of Penn Station in New York,
Yeah.
which was a gem.
Right.
But I'm a historic guy, so I
Well,
like
sure, but
preserve these things.
rail, very, very important. Listen, it was so important that when I was on the executive council, the state of New Hampshire purchased the Concord to Lincoln line to keep the
Keep the option open.
keep the option open, but to
Yeah.
keep the business, to keep the paper mills in Lincoln open.
Yeah.
Because they had no way to get product in and out, so we purchased that line.
Yeah.
And we still own that. We
Thank
still
goodness,
own it. Yeah.
because it's
So-
there in case we want to use
Yeah,
it again,
right,
which I think
yeah.
we will.
Well, I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Rail is going to come back. The question is when, and when it will really be a solid part of the plan, not in and out as it has been for a number of years. But I'd like to talk about one other item before we leave, and that's Army and the situation in Manchester and Dean Kamen. Now, Dean Kamen received, or that Army project received an $80 million grant from the Department of Defense. They have raised or have pledges for about $200 million to match that $80 million. Their goal is to create human replacement, kidneys, skin, and other organs by taking the DNA of the individual, and out of that creating a replica, a real one. And I think it's cutting edge technology, something that's not going to happen overnight. But I've always said that my reason for strongly supporting it is the good that it's going to do for human beings, particularly those who are fighting overseas. In the old days, in World War II, if you were wounded on the field, you died. Today, you get saved, but you may lose an arm, you may lose a leg. Look at what happens to your internal organs sometimes because of these devices that blow up. If you can create replacement organs, real ones, out of their own tissue, they'll work and they'll function, and you'll not only save lives, but you'll make the life better. And that's why I strongly support this.
We will be leading the world with
Yes.
this project.
And Manchester and New Hampshire will be the center of this research and development. Now, what are we willing to give this new entity, Army, to do this? We're willing to give up business profits and business enterprise taxes for 10 years. And we've also got, as part of this bill, a loan repayment schedule so that those who are attracted here, if they have significant loan indebtedness, will do something to help repay that. That's the price that we the state of New Hampshire, will pay in order to keep this thing going, to create jobs, in the end to produce revenue, but the most important thing is to do something positive for humanity.
Yeah.
I think that's a marvelous goal.
And I believe there was
And
some
I'm strong
company
for
from
that.
Kentucky that already is moving here to be part of this.
Well, I think a lot of companies have said that they would come. Cayman has attracted, he attracts engineers because of his DECA situation, but a number of companies have said they want to come because they want to be part of this cutting edge research and development. Now, people are against the tax credit. Well, it isn't a tax credit because they don't pay any taxes now. But it's a situation where you say you don't pay taxes for 10 years, and we've defined that 10-year period. Because you don't expect this to make a profit. All of that money, hopefully, is going into research and development, and that's why you want to be relieved of any tax obligation. So I hope we're going to pass that tomorrow. It's coming out of the Finance Committee, ought to pass with a 5-to-1 vote. That's important to me. I think it's important to Manchester, and it's important to New Hampshire. We're going to work hard on that piece of legislation. So UNH Manchester is involved. Our community is involved, and there've been a lot of support has been generated throughout the community for that project. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for New Hampshire, and it's a big deal for Manchester. And it'll be a separate corporation. It will not be part of DECA. Army will be a separate situation, separate corporation run by independent people who will provide the expertise. Technology will be provided by universities. Made a significant contribution in terms of upfitting labs. So it's a game that everybody's going to play in. And I hope that we will all be the beneficiaries of this work.
Well, it's certainly the most exciting thing. You know, Manchester has a wonderful history of reinventing itself.
Yes.
From a mill town to when the mills all went down in the Great Depression after the 36 flood, and when the Amoskeag went bankrupt, and it looked like the city was done for because it was a company town.
Yes, it was.
It
It
was
was
a
a
very
company
quintessential company town.
Yep.
But people, the leaders of this town came forward and said, "No, we're not giving up. We'll do it." And they've transformed the mill yard into, what the image was, the dark satanic mill.
Right. Oh, yeah, it was.
They've transformed it into this place that's so desirable. All they can talk about, can we get more parking?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Everybody wants parking.
With a train, that'll help on the parking, too,
Right,
because
right.
people will be able to come by the train.
Right.
Hey, we're out of time, Lou. How did that happen?
Well, time flies when you're having fun.
Time's time we're having fun. We have a great co-host like Lou
Well, thank you,
D'Alessandro,
great
who's
to be
given
with
so
you.
much
Thank
to
you.
the city and the
Yeah.
state and continues to do it.
I'm the beneficiary of
And
your kindness. So
I
thank
just
you.
want to give a bouquet to my good friend Mike Farley. Didn't quite make it to be city chair, but he's a great guy.
Yep.
And the reason he's not here, he's working with the Hibernians because this Sunday is the best parade in the state of New Hampshire and in northern New England. It's a gift to the city of Manchester. Costs us nothing. So go out there. Hope the weather's great. Go out there and wear your green and have a wonderful time enjoying the St. Patrick's Day parade. And before that, the city Dems will have their
annual
St.
Patrick's Day
roast
breakfast.
people and raise money
raise money.
at the Tower Cafe at 9 o'clock,
Right.
here in Manchester. So I hope we'll see you all there. And we'll be back next week with another edition of the Progress Report. And thank you to our callers, and thank you to Lou for being here.
Thank you,
He's a
Bob.
busy guy. I wasn't sure he was going to make it, but of course he did. It's really great. See you next week, folks.
Take care.
Bye.